All right. Well, it's noon on the dot here, Wednesday, October 9th, 2024. Really excited to dive into our first installment of REAP's 2024 Fall Energy Speaker Series with this amazing panel of experts on clean energy funding opportunities for Alaska homes and businesses. I'm really going to hand it off to Jenny in a bit here, my colleague who runs our Alaska Network for Energy Education and Employment program, to just really sort of moderate this discussion, but wanted to start with a land acknowledgement. Really, all of our work here at REAP, which is guided by the mission of accelerating the development of renewable energy and promoting energy efficiency across the state, takes direct inspiration from Alaska Native peoples and their, basically timeless and generational sort of stewardship of these lands and prioritization of conservation of resources and sort of structuring society in a way where all folks can thrive. And so that really sort of just directly inspires the work that we do across our different programmatic offerings and sort of our efforts to bring in other experts across different departments and programs to share their expertise to empower Alaskans to build that clean energy, both economy, but then also just that thriving future for us all. And so really, want to take a second here to just acknowledge that I'm on the unceded territories of the Dena'ina peoples, work in Anchorage here with a number of our colleagues, and would encourage you to just be mindful of whose lands you're on today. Also just want to reintroduce Renewable Energy Alaska Project, or REAP, for those who aren't familiar. We've got a big list of registrants today, and I know folks are sort of filing in, perhaps jumping from one Zoom to the next, but just want to, again, just promote the fact that this is hosted by REAP. We're a member-based organization with over 60 dues-paying members, spanning, electric utilities, private developers and businesses, Alaska Native entities, local governments, educational institutions, other nonprofits, and really all geared towards that mission of accelerating the development of renewable energy and energy efficiency in Alaska. And finally, just want to plug that this is the first installment in our four-part series. So we'll share some resources to register for the upcoming webinars, and then that final one that'll be in person at the Anchorage Museum on November 20th. But without much further ado, I'll hand it off to Jenny just to sort of cue us up on today's discussion and introduce our fabulous panelists.
Great. Thank you, Donovan. Like you said, I'm Jenny Stars. I also work for REAP here on Dena'ina Lands in Anchorage. I'm the program manager for the Alaska Network for Energy Education and Employment, or ANE, where I really work with communities and individuals across the state to connect and build up clean energy career pathways and training opportunities to help fill this huge need and huge opportunity that is facing the state right now. Which is one of the reasons we're doing this call today. We are going to be navigating through a few of the many clean energy funding opportunities, specifically out there for Alaskan homes, businesses, and nonprofits. The Inflation Reduction Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law have brought huge opportunities to the state. Really, really a lot to invest in energy efficiency and renewable energy projects. But I think we all recognize that it's a lot to wade through. So we're going to try to help today by focusing on three different opportunities. Well, three overarching opportunities. There's different aspects of each one that can cover a lot of different things. So the clean energy tax incentives, the USDA's Rural Energy for America program, another REAP, and the Alaska Housing Finance Corporation's forthcoming rebates, which are focused on home efficiency and home electrification and appliances. So I have some questions for each of our panelists to kind of kick things off. We'll kind of follow the conversation as it goes. We also really want to hear from you and make sure your questions get answered. So please use the Q&A function throughout the webinar to log your questions as we go. We'll work them in and do our best to get them answered by the end. We'll save some time at the end for direct questions. And we'll also be sharing some resources in the chat, so pay attention there, especially if you want a web page or a resource for a specific program. Okay, so our first segment will be on the Inflation Reduction Act's tax credits. We are joined by Ryan Whalen, Special Assistant to the President for States and Implementation, and Rachel McCleary, the Senior Advisor at the U.S. Department of Treasury Inflation Reduction Act Program Office. They've both been really hard at work getting out information about the IRA's clean energy incentives, which include tax credits and a new direct pay or elective pay provision for certain entities. Um, I want to be very clear that this is information, it's not tax advice. You know, not an accountant, but we just hope that this helps you as you plan some of your projects and investments to understand what's out there. So I'll just start it off directed at Ryan, but Rachel, if you have anything to add, please feel free to join. Can you give us just a brief overview of the scope of the IRA's clean energy tax credits and who the different sort of buckets are available for?
Absolutely. Reap, thank you for having us. Thank you, everyone who's spending time with us today and your interest in understanding more about the IRA, how it works, and how you can take advantage of it to deliver on your and your community's priorities. So there are a few things that I think are really exciting and unique about the IRA and its clean energy provisions. The first is that there really is something in it for just about everybody, whether you are a business, you are a homeowner, you are a local government, you're a nonprofit institution, and beyond. There are mechanisms in the IRA that that you're able to take advantage of. The second is that, as our colleague John Podesta likes to call this, it is government-enabled but private sector-led. And what he means by that is ultimately, this really uses especially the power of the tax code to help individuals and institutions and organizations take advantage of the clean energy revolution. And so what that means is that there are this range of credits, 24 different credits that are in the IRA for clean energy, everything from installing solar to purchasing electric vehicles to everything all the way to nuclear production and more that are all available in there. And by using the tax code, you're also in most situations talking about circumstances where these are not competitive, meaning that it's a matter of if you are eligible for the credit, then you get the credit. And then also, in large part, they are uncapped. Many of them run until 2032. And so what that means is that individuals and organizations have the opportunity to not only identify what their priorities are, how these kinds of investments can fit into their capital plan, into their household budget, and more, and then make the investments in a way that matches the resources and opportunities that they have. And so there's a power and a flexibility there that I think is unique and exciting. And the fact that many of these credits are not competitive and that they are uncapped, I think really helps folks think big and really think about just what they want to accomplish and see how the credits can help them get there. There are, I'll describe a few categories at a high level and we can go further into them. Number one, there are a number of credits for institutions around things, like I said, clean energy production, clean vehicles, and more. And those are available both on the private side for businesses, as tax credits have been available for a long time, and then this new mechanism called direct pay that Rachel will go to in much more depth. That brings the power of those credits directly into the hands of local governments, nonprofits, rural co-ops, and many more institutions. And Rachel will describe more about how that works, but if you say, we don't file taxes, we don't get tax credits, the whole point is there's a new powerful mechanism that is newly available through the IRA to let you do that. And it really is a game changer. And those credits are a mixture of percentage basis and capped dollar amounts depending on the type of investments. There are also a number of adders that are available based on geography, the use of prevailing wage, and more that help you increase the amount of the credit you receive. Then on the individual side, there are a number of credits that are available, federal tax credits we're talking about, for home energy efficiency upgrades and the purchasing of clean transportation, specifically electric vehicles and charging infrastructure. And there's a really very useful site called energy.gov/save that outlines credit by credit, type of investment by type of investment, all the different ones that are available. So would encourage this group to take a look at that. I don't have access to the chat on my government computer, so it asks someone else to type in energy.gov/save. But it's a really powerful one, and line by line, it goes into a lot of detail. There's also rebate programs that are coming. These are administered state by state. I know Alaska is hard at work on their application right now. That is an additional piece that are available to individuals at point of sale, or in the case of appliances, or through a contractor when you're doing home energy efficiency upgrades that are available as well. But the federal tax credits are for individuals and for institutions are available now. Folks are filing for them, in their 2023 taxes. They were doing it now, and available certainly right now in 2024 and beyond.
Great. Thank you. That was a huge amount of information, but really helpful grounding in everything that's available. On the individual side, are these credits just available for homeowners, or are they also available for renters if they, for some reason, felt really altruistic towards their landlord, or knew that they were responsible for their energy bills and saw that they were going to be there for a while?
Yeah. So energy.gov/save will be very useful here. And credit by credit, what you'll see is there are a number of them where it's specifically tagged that renters are explicitly not eligible for them. Many of these credits are, home energy efficiency upgrades. So you're talking about anything from, new doors to water heaters, to air conditioners, to appliances and more. So while those may not always be the choice of renters to get those, and most commonly will be the choice of the homeowner to get, there are some cases where renters are eligible for it. I think in some of the appliance scenarios, those are more sort of, you can imagine something like that happening with a renter. But sort of type of purchase, each one is outlined there, and you can see the eligibility for renters versus homeowners. What I'll also observe is on the vehicle side, it's about whoever purchases the vehicle. And so that's who's eligible for that. And then there's also credits available on the charging side for installing charging equipment, both at the household level and the institutional level. There are some census tract requirements associated with that. My expectation is that the large majority of Alaskan census tracts would qualify for that. But there is a map where that's specified, where those charging infrastructure credits are available. But that's something that we can also share as well.
Great. Thank you. And you mentioned the timeline for these incentives being pretty long. I was curious, can people take advantage of them multiple times during that span?
Yes, generally the answer is yes. And so, whether someone is purchasing on the individual side, many windows for their home, or just, sort of a handful of windows that they're upgrading. If an institution is purchasing vehicles for their fleet or a local government, and they can purchase one electric vehicle the first year, they can purchase 5 the second year, and so on and so forth. As a campus for a university or a school district might be thinking about putting solar on their roofs. They could put it on one building to start and then later come and do additional buildings. So, and while specifics matter here, and as discussed, this is information, not tax advice. What I would say is that, broadly speaking, you can while for a specific, you can't go for the same electric vehicle multiple times, but for the second and third and the fourth vehicle, you'd be able to. Generally speaking, that is available and generally is uncapped. And then
Great.
actually my last observation there, uncapped book for the individual, but generally, and for most of the credits, they are also uncapped nationally, meaning, there are some credits where there are a certain amount of monies that are available to be used for credits, but ultimately, once that number is hit nationally, that credit is no longer available. In this case, in most of the credits, that is not the case, and so there doesn't need to be kind of a rush to it. It should really reflect your priorities and what it means to make these investments in a way that works for what you want to accomplish and what your resources are.
That's really helpful. And before I move to Rachel to focus on the direct pay, I just want to ask, when people are thinking about pursuing these, what sort of documentation should they be keeping track of? How, I mean, I know that you redeem them through filing your taxes, but is information for that on on that energy.gov save website, or is there just some general advice you can give for that process?
Absolutely. Number one, that site, it describes the forms that are required for any given credit, and also some of the documentation. And there's some links also over to the Treasury and IRS sites where there are some more details. And so that's a really important piece. And Rachel can talk some more about the resources on the Treasury side. But what I would say is sort of, for things like vehicles, vehicle identification number and other things are in some cases required and so forth. But really, the kind of standard purchase materials that you get when you get one of these investments is generally what you need. And so when folks are working through it, working with their tax professional, they're able to make sure that they have it either submitted or just have it available. But broadly, what I would say is that keep your materials, keep your receipts, keep your documentation, because there will be some things that are required. And observe that for those entities that are direct pay eligible, this is a new process for them. And so they'll be learning that, but we have lots of folks who are going through it that Rachel can describe. But and so some of that will be new and different for the accounting office at the community college or the local government or others to be doing this exercise. But it's all very doable. And now there's a growing, there are many, many institutions around the country that are doing these filings for the first time, for sure. And I have one other just observation to share around the credits, particularly for institutions and local governments and otherwise. Generally speaking, these credits, you can stack these credits with other federal and local grant funding and other awards. There are some restrictions to that, but in large part, you can combine them. And so as you think about things like a local match that's required or otherwise, the credits can help you chip away at that in a number of cases. And lastly, these are credits that you get after you've made the investments and put into service. So grant funding where you get the award beforehand and you have payments that come along the way, the credit acts just like it would on your personal taxes, that ultimately at the end of the year or whenever it is that you're filing, the credit is then assessed against that and perhaps you get monies back or there's some reduction in your tax liability there. So these credits do come at the end. And so to the extent that you are getting other federal monies to support your projects, this will operate a little bit differently, but in many cases, you can combine them.
Great. Thank you. That's a really powerful amplification of funding that is good for people to know about as they're planning these things. Okay, Rachel. So I know we got a little bit about the goals of directive pay or elective pay to really broaden the reach of these tax incentives. We heard a little bit about who's eligible. Was there anything you wanted to add there about either like eligible entities or eligible sorts of projects or credits?
Sure, yeah. And I will say this is it's a lot of information, and elective pay, also known as direct pay, you'll hear us interchange using both of them. It's the same thing when you hear both terms. It is very novel and very new, and it's expansive. So There's a ton of information on irs.gov/elective pay. That's where all of the formal IRS materials lie. So if you have questions about eligibility, about the specific entity that qualifies, check out irs.gov/elective pay. I'll go ahead and drop it in here. But I do want to underscore the reach and the eligibility. Ryan mentioned some institutions, essentially any nonprofit or any tax exempt entity under the 501c3 portion of the tax code is eligible. So obviously nonprofits come to mind. That extends to churches, that extends to schools, like Ryan had talked about. It extends to labor unions. If there's a labor union that wants to put solar on their building, they can be eligible for elective pay. So it's a massive list. It also includes rural co-ops, a ton of different entities, and there's a full sheet on irs.gov/elective pay that lists specifically who all is eligible. I'll go ahead and drop that in the chat, and you can see what might resonate most with you. But it really is meant to be a force multiplier to allow the build out of more clean energy projects to entities that otherwise would never be eligible for these federal incentives.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I know that you can and do whole webinars on direct pay because it is new. There's a lot to learn. Without getting too into the weeds on exact forms and things, is there maybe like an overview or a timeline of sort of highlights that you could give about how to access direct pay? Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a whole user guide about this for those that do want to go into detail. It's like 70 pages long, step by step, screen by screen, everything you need to do. And it is a fairly simple process. So first, what we tell every entity is to identify and then pursue the qualifying project or activity. So there are 12 different tax credits, 12 different types of clean energy projects that you can put into place that are eligible for direct pay. I'll go ahead and drop that link to those 12 credits in the chat, but it's anywhere from manufacturing to energy generation, vehicles, and others. Lots of different opportunities. You can kind of see your credit, what project works, and go from there. So again, I'll drop that in the chat. And once you've kind of checked the box on this initial step, you then complete the project. You place it into service. So an important thing to remember about taxes is that just like when you file your own personal tax returns, you don't get that money up front, right? You make the purchase, you give the charitable giving, and then you note that on your tax return during tax filing season. The IRS takes a look, and at the end of tax filing season or near the end of it, or when the IRS reviews your information, then you get the money back. So it's important to remember that in this context, unlike grant and loans, like Ryan said, there's not this cumbersome competitive process. If you meet the stipulations of the underlying credit, you get the cash. However, it does come at the end, right? And that also includes when you would start engaging with the IRS. So let's say you've put solar on your roof, you completed the project, you placed it into service. Now you can go into the IRS's irsenergycredits.gov portal and start putting information in about that project. So you'll need a lot of different info to do this, right? You're essentially pre-filing with the IRS. You're going to put in your own personal information. In some cases, you're going to put information about the project. And then from there, you'll get this number from the IRS that you then put on your tax return. So then you have that number from the IRS, you've been given it through this pre-filing registration process. Now you can file it on your form, depending on what type of entity you are. So as Ryan said, keep the receipts, right? Keep all of the information that you need. And then from there, the IRS truly does kind of give you a step-by-step guide of what you need to do. On top of that, the IRS has been hosting regular office hours on this specific process alone. There are 3 more in October. So if you're on the call and you're thinking, hey, I think I might have actually put a project like this into service last tax year. I'm wondering if I can get a tax credit back for that. There's still time. The filing deadline extends into November 15th, and the IRS is hosting 3 office hours to talk about the pre-filing process and what you need to do with your forms so that you could get that tax credited just in the nick of time for the close of filing season. So there's a lot of resources available at the IRS. We're doing things with them that we have never done before. mean, the IRS has never had office hours like this for folks to be able to join and understand. So we're really hopeful that people take advantage of it, and we want to learn with you, right? This is brand new for us, just like it's brand new for you. So feedback and understanding in these early innings of the IRA, it's just so, so important, which is one of the many reasons why I'm really glad to be with you all today.
Great. Thank you. That was a ton of information. I saw a question in the chat about if we'll be sharing these resources after. Yes, we will be sharing the whole list of resources. We'll make sure to get the link to the office hours that Rachel mentioned. Yeah, I know this is a lot of information. It's hard to give an overview on all these things, but I think a really great takeaway from both Rachel and Ryan is that these are available for a lot of different categories, a lot of different entities, and they can be used as a sort of force multiplier with other programs if you're looking at some of the next ones we're going to be talking to, or potentially others that are out there. So if you have any lingering questions, please post those in the Q&A. We are going to circle back to all panelists for a full round of questions at the end, but I'm going to move us along to talk to Dan Smith from the USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture, Rural Development. He is the state energy coordinator and has worked in Alaskan energy for, I think, about 10 years in various capacities and roles. And today we're going to be talking about their REAP program, Rural Energy for America, which I believe had its funding expanded under the IRA, and is a very exciting opportunity. And so, Dan, who and what is this program best for?
So thanks, Jenny. Yeah, so our REAP is for rural small businesses and agricultural producers. And in the Alaska context, that basically means don't be in Anchorage, and we can work with you. And even if you are headquartered in Anchorage, as long as the project itself is serving a rural area, you're eligible for a REAP grant. Now, the definitions of businesses is it has to follow the Small Business Administration definition of a small business. And even then, we can, if you are kind of on the fence, if are you a small business or has things been going really well for you and you're making a lot of money? If you're a little on the bigger side, come talk to me. We'll see if we can figure something out. We've been able to tap into the SBA 8A clauses for disadvantaged businesses in a couple instances. On the agricultural production side, you need to be listed as an agricultural producer. Unfortunately, we can't do hemp at this point. But other than that, it's anything you can grow or harvest legally. We work with a lot of fishermen or fisher people, and it's kind of challenging to get yourself classified as an agricultural producer, so it's easier to just apply as a small business doing agricultural activity. So that's how we've done it. The other interesting thing is we can work with co-ops, even if you are a nonprofit cooperative, a 501c12 cooperative, which most our electric utilities up here, at least the cooperative ones are. They can tap into this REAP program, as well as there is a cooperative grocery store that is in the process of applying for a REAP grant, and we're super excited about them. But yeah, that's the short answer for eligibility and what it's for.
Great. And so I understand that there's sort of like two different types of projects. Maybe that's boiling it down a little bit, but energy efficiency and renewable energy. Can you maybe give an example of an energy efficiency project, perhaps a successful one in Alaska?
Yeah. So actually, I'll kill two birds with one stone here. It was a sawmill in Southeast Alaska. They approached me and said, "Hey, we want to do a hydroelectric project for our sawmill." And I was like, "Oh, that's great. That's exciting. There's lots of hydro in Southeast." And then after talking with them, they weren't actually going to construct a new hydroelectric. They just wanted to tap into the existing, municipally owned and operated hydroelectric dam. And because they wouldn't own the generation asset, they wouldn't be eligible for the REAP grant under that. But, we switched over to the energy efficiency side, Like you said, REAP grants, they kind of split out into renewable energy or energy efficiency. On the energy efficiency side, what we did is we got an energy audit to basically state and show the math that connecting to the hydroelectric grid would save energy versus their current operation, which they had to barge in diesel fuel and run their own generator. And so it saved a bunch of energy on, just by plugging their sawmill into the grid. So we got an energy efficiency grant where they basically built a power line. And that's another thing we like to do is we like to be creative with how we apply this funding. It's not just insulation, LED light bulbs, or solar panels. Whatever you're trying to do, we'll workshop it and try to see what's possible.
That's a really cool example of like the Alaska case, the
Mhm.
uniqueness, being able to still fit into a federal program. Um, and I know you mentioned solar panels as a renewable project option. Are there any others you want to call out on either side that you've seen be really successful in Alaska?
We did last week. I was up in Fairbanks, and we visited several small businesses that received a REAP grant, and pretty much all of our REAP grants in the Fairbanks area have been for roof-mounted solar. And we ran the gamut of small businesses. We've done wilderness guiding, metal fabrication, animal hospitals, assisted living, doggy daycare. If you're a small business and you got a business license and you want to do something to lower your energy bill, that's what this is for. Um, so let's figure something out.
Awesome. And so let's talk money for a second. I think that's what it comes down to for a lot of people. How much of a project does this program cover? And yeah, what sort of cost matching creativity is allowed or have you seen?
Yeah. So everything I'm about to say, I have to caveat with the fact that I'm working off of last fiscal year's information, fiscal year 25, which we're 9 days into now. We have not announced exactly what it's going to look like. It's still running through the approvals process internally, and it's hopefully going to drop in a week or two. Um, that being said, we're anticipating it's going to be very similar, if not identical, to the previous fiscal year. And so that's all the information I'm going to give you is what we did last year. So what we did last year is these grants are 50% of the cost, the total eligible project cost. So if you have a portion of the project where you want to buy a diesel generator to supplement your off-grid lodge, we just have to take the generator part out of our calculation. Um, and then it is on a reimbursable basis. So you need to pay up front to build the project somehow. And however you want to pay to get it built, whether it's a line of credit, financing through a vendor, tax credits, retirement accounts, savings accounts. We've seen people get real creative with it. But you just have to show us that you have a means to pay to get the project built initially. And then once it's successfully constructed and operational, then we can reimburse you for half the cost. And the caps for these grant requests, just the grant funds, are on the renewable energy side. It's $1 million grant request. And because it's a 50% grant, it could be a $2 million project. We've never come that close in Alaska. The largest one we've done is a $460,000 grant. And that just recently got announced. On the energy efficiency side, the maximum is 500,000, which again, we have not come anywhere close to that. And just both of those types of projects combined, the state of Alaska, our state office receives 1.25 million per quarter to work with. And it's still, I say the state of Alaska, but it's still the Alaska branch of USDA Rural Development. So it's still federally administered. But yeah, we get 1.25 million per quarter to work with. And again, That was last fiscal year. We'll see what this next fiscal year looks like, but it's probably going to be very similar.
Great. Um, and you mentioned, you have this amount quarterly. I know last year there were quarterly deadlines, but people could apply, sort of in a rolling manner. Could you maybe explain like how that timeline is
Oh yeah.
anticipated to work, or maybe did work in the past, if it's gonna,
Yeah.
yeah.
So the general guidance is we have quarterly deadlines, and that is when we have to cut it off and say, if you send us something on, I'll use a recent example. If you send us something on October 1st, well, we're just going to hang on to it until December 31st, the end of the quarter, to be eligible. So it just adds extra waiting time before you hear back. But I mean, that being said, if you have an idea for a project and you want to fill out the application, we are always accepting applications. We just go on a quarterly basis when it comes to competition, how we get our funding. So if you fill out your application, and you get it in early, you might just have to wait a little bit longer. But we're generally always accepting grant applications for this program.
Awesome. And I know you're a great resource to folks if they have questions or, creative ideas for what would count in what category. Donovan also shared a link to technical assistance form through Information Insights and Rural Cap. And we also do a little bit of help trying to get the word out about the program. So yeah, thank you so much for all of that information. Like I said, after talking to Rachel and Ryan, please add any extra questions you have in the chat and we will, or sorry, in the Q&A, not in the chat. The chat is popping. It's hard to keep up with the questions in the chat. So yeah, put those in the Q&A, and we will make sure we get them answered in the last 15 minutes or so. Okay, so thank you, Dan. Now we're going to spend some time talking to Ethan from AHFC, Alaska Housing Finance Corporation. So Ethan is the Energy Program Information Manager for the Research and Rural Development Group at AHFC. And we're going to be talking about their upcoming rebate program, specifically the Home Efficiency Rebate Program and the Home Electrification and Appliance Rebate Program. So I know that these are work in progress. Like I think Ryan mentioned, it's the funding is coming down from the federal government, and then AHFC is administering and designing the program. Can you kind of give us an overview of what types of projects and investments this is gonna cover? And I know we have a slide from you, so we'll work on getting that up too.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. So we've got two different rebate programs to talk about today, as Jenny mentioned. So the Home Efficiency Rebate Program, we'll cover that first as she pulls up the slide. So this one will be somewhat similar, if anyone remembers, to the Home Efficiency State Rebate Program that ran from 2008 to 2018. So in this one, it is sort of whole home efficiency retrofits based on existing homes. So you would get an energy rating, energy assessment of your house. You would have a list of improvements you can make, sort of categorized by their savings to investment ratio. And you can choose from there which ones you'll perform at your house. You will get a post energy rating after doing those. And then on the left column, you can see based on your modeled savings from your energy assessment, then you'd be eligible for, some percentage of what you have your project cost back. I always like to use this slide because there's a lot of different segments to this. Basically, it's two overall income strata. So you've got your sort of low to moderate income, which is 80% of area median income, determined by HUD, which is up to about $89,000 for a family of four. And then you've got sort of that 80% and above, where your rebate amount is sort of halved. So you can see, 4,000 to 2,000 or 8,000 to 4,000 based on whichever modeled savings you're able to achieve. So these are the guidelines from DOE. This is, what they put out for the program. And sort of where we are right now is really working with DOE to try to raise some of these limits. living in Alaska, we've all done stuff, $4,000, $8,000 doesn't always go that far in a construction project. In the last one, a lot of do-it-yourself improvements were allowed. So people were really allowed to get good improvements by, doing their own insulation, doing their own air sealing. Under this program, DOE is really pushing that, all this work needs to be done by a licensed contractor, so that it can be vetted and made sure, the installations are good, which obviously is going to raise those prices quite a bit for, people entering it. So we're really trying to get that dollar up there so people can do, deeper, better retrofits of their house, and still come under, and same thing with the sort of 80% of project costs for those low income folks. We're really trying to raise that up to 100, just because for a low income family resident, to come out of pocket $2,000, $4,000 to do these is a big ask. It's a big step. I'm really trying to work with Department of Energy to let us, broaden that and make it a little easier for low income folks to take advantage of. There's also a multifamily portion of this, which we'll probably roll out later. We're still working on that. As you can see, the amounts are fairly similar. There's a lot of restrictions and asks for, say, a landlord to come in. They have to have, lease modifications with all their tenants. They have to get the benefits, a way that the benefits flow through to the tenants. And so we need to look at that and try to make it so that it really makes sense for a landlord that would want to do that to make it make sense for them and for the tenants, for those low income folks there. So that's kind of the broad look of this one. I don't know if there's any questions. We can do the next one and then jump back to questions.
And I might just insert one because you mentioned getting a rating. And so do you guys have resources to direct interested folks to where they can get that assessment or audit to get a rating?
We do. We have that on our website, a list of the AHFC certified energy raters. So you can go search that on our website, or I could try to find it, drop in the chat before at the end, so you can connect with them. The other thing we're really working on before we move on, some of the other states that have dropped this or have launched their programs are really working sort of existing programs. They have existing companies in the space, and Alaska really doesn't have that. So we're really working with Department of Energy and with our weatherization partners that run the weatherization assistance program, the implementers, to fit that in, since they're the ones that are really on the front lines working for low income Alaskans and really, doing that weatherization and those home energy retrofits. So we're trying to figure out how we can work with them to really bring these benefits to the lower, 50% or below. So that's kind of a big thing we're working with DOE on, trying to get approval before we go with our full submission of the program. So
great, that's helpful. And so the next one was the home electrification and appliance rebates.
Yes.
So you want to go through a little brief overview on this one?
Sure. So this one's a little simpler. These are meant to be sort of point of sale or direct rebates. So you're not intended to have to come out of pocket for these. So it's a variety of improvements you can make to your house. It's also the same. So it's, up to that 80%. It's kind of doubled what you get at that 81 to 150% income bracket. So really, meant to bring these benefits as much as possible to low income Alaskans. And it's a fairly limited pointed list of appliances and improvements you can make with, dollar amounts. You don't have to have an energy rating for this, and these do apply for new home construction. So if you wanted to put a heat pump in a new house, you can get that 8,000 to 4,000 depending where you are. Sort of one of the bigger ones in here that not a lot of people are talking about is sort of like the electrical upgrades you can cover in here. Getting your panel upgraded, getting your wiring upgraded. If you're looking to possibly put an EV charger in, to put solar in, this really is intended to kind of like prep people for that and get their homes updated and ready to go. This one also is mostly intended to be through contractors. And so we kind of have to work with sort of the big box stores, because they have to verify, if you're getting a new water heater, that your old water heater is coming out. If you're getting new, clothes dryer, your old one's coming out, because they're really trying to remove any sort of the carbon, natural gas burning appliances. So we're working through that stage of how that'll work to make this available as broadly as possible through Alaska, which, with so many non-road connected communities we have, is always challenging. So
totally, yeah. And You've mentioned a couple times like you're in the process of working with DOE and getting these things approved and Alaskified a little bit.
Mhm.
Do you have any guidance you can share on timeline for expected rollout or yeah, anything like that?
Sure. I mean, really optimistically, we would love to have these out by, the spring of next year. That's been what we've seen for other states is, they're looking at a 5 to 6 month review process when they sort of formally submit. We're trying to handle a lot of our issues with DOE before we go through that, so maybe we can accelerate a little bit. But really, before next heating season is really kind of our last thing. We really want to have it out, available to Alaskans, available through the state before that. So working hard, trying to get these things approved, trying to let DOE do what we want to do and how we want to make this as accessible as possible right now.
Great. And I know, we mentioned at the beginning how tax credits can sort of interact with programs and how exactly do rebates and tax credits interact? Do you know any of that?
I might defer to Ryan a bit on that. A lot of this, this is sort of meant for those, who maybe don't make enough to really take advantage of the tax credits. They can't afford to be out out and wait for the tax credit. So this is really meant to hit the low to moderate income folks. But there is a lot of overlap. And so that might be a thing you really want to look at if you can get a rebate, or if you get a rebate on one thing, I don't know if you can then get a tax credit on it as well. Maybe depend on how much you spend over the rebate. So,
Mhm. Yeah, Ryan, was there anything you wanted to jump in and add on that front?
Two things. Number one, it's just so exciting to see Alaska pulling their program together. It's great, and really thrilled that you're doing this. That's number one. And number two, Ethan, I think you sort of said it well, that there are some income caps associated with that. And so there are some specifics about sort of tax circumstances that matter a little bit. And so would recommend that folks start with that guide, that online guide that I mentioned, to be able to understand what purchases are eligible for which and how they match that.
Great. Thank you. And how can people stay in the loop about this as it's working its way through, Ethan? Do you guys have, a good website or, yeah.
We've got a landing page on our website. You could sign up for email updates. We're kind of in the process of building a microsite, a standalone site sort of for this program and some of our other energy rebate programs. And one of the big things we're working on, I just want to mention, we're working on a sort of a portal for this, so people can come, they can get their income verified, their location verified, and they can see all these different ones, what they possibly could apply for or be qualified for, including Solar for All, which we're not really talking here, but that's another program we're coming out, which will be subsidized rooftop solar for low-income Alaskans. So that'll be tied in there, and really try to help people walk through the different stages of how to fully, maximize these benefits for themselves. And I wanted to answer Katie's question, which she asked, do heat pump installs require removing other heat sources? Originally they did, but they pulled that out, luckily. So if you're in a community in Alaska, which is, sort of outside the Southeast, where maybe heat pump wouldn't be for you all the time, but 8 months out of the year would be a really good option. That is allowed. So, which is really exciting. It's really good. So it can, work in other places in Alaska than it would if it had to be only your primary heat source.
Awesome. Thank you. And yes, thank you for briefly mentioning Solar for All, which is another really exciting program that's going to be coming to Alaska in, a year or two. And hopefully, maybe doubling, tripling the solar we've got here.
I know that, and sorry, one more thing, and then I'll jump about. I know there's some questions. So we also have a new home construction rebate coming out next year, and that's for those looking to build a new home, for someone who's building a high energy efficiency home, 5 stars plus or 6-star. There'll be a rebate for that, and more to come on that one too. So that's really the one. If you're looking to build a new home and really want to maximize your energy efficiency, that'll be there for you too.
Awesome. Thank you. And I just want to up a question in the chat, which was, how long will these programs last? Do you know that?
It sort of depends. I mean, until funding runs out, we're about 75 million across those two. But I think it's 2031 is when it's supposed to go to. So it kind of depends, if we expend the funds, then it'll be over early. But 2031, Solar for All is similar, 5 years. And then the new home one will be sort of, it's a limited fund. So it'll just be until the funds are dispersed.
Great. Thank you so much, Ethan, for sharing all of that, and for giving us some insight into the process. I think, sometimes we don't know as much about why something is taking a while or all the work that goes into translating federal programs to Alaska. So thank you. Okay, I think we're going to try to get as many questions answered as we can in these last 10 minutes. Donovan, do you have any queued up that you think we should start with?
Yeah, and I'll just again a friendly plug to please log your questions using the Q&A function. There's a number of them in the chat that are really great, and we want to make sure not to miss them. And so if you ask one, please maybe try and copy and paste over to Q&A. I do want to just sort of start off with Jason Custer's question, and I can just read it off. Also, just shout out to Rachel and others who've been prolific at answering a number of them, just using the sort of like chat respond function here. And we'll try and make sure and capture those in all of our follow-up with the links and resources and everything like that. Really, hopefully just a good starting point for folks to access these opportunities. Just to read off Jason's question real quick. Some communities are served by investor-owned utilities that must pay taxes. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act included a provision that treats grants as taxable income. This actively discourages tax-paying utilities from applying for grants and bringing the benefits to rural Alaska. Oftentimes, in rural communities, the economics don't support that revenue needed to pay the taxes on grants. Is there a way we can work out a solution so that rural and remote communities served by IOUs do not miss out on federal opportunities? So not specifically sort of related to each of these different programs, but just curious, given the expertise on the call, if folks have initial ideas.
I mean, this is outside of the scope of the IRA, but I'll just note that statutory deadlines for the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act is coming up. That is likely going to be next year. It was passed in 2017, and we are starting to round the corner when some of those timelines expire. So I would take a close look at that law and figure out if there's a position, that you would want to take. I think this is certainly more a role for Congress to play than it is for a regulatory body, but I'll just note, given the specific issue and then given the intersection of timing on when these expire, it would be worth looking into further, whoever had asked that question on the call.
Great. Thank you. There's a few here that I think were either partially addressed or could easily be answered pretty quickly. One, if I participated in the old housing efficiency rebate program, is it possible to participate in the new one with a new house?
Yes, yeah. Participation in the old program does not exclude participation in the new one. So
great. And then similarly geared towards Ethan, is the HFC electrification and appliance rebate program the same as the program at energy.gov/save? The values look the same, or are these separate?
Yeah, that's the same. So this is a DOE funded program coming through AEA to HFC. So you can find a lot more information on DOE's website about the program.
Great. We've got one from Natalie Kylie Bergen here. I might have missed it if this was covered, but can we get a little explainer for the Tribal HEAR program, HEAR, in case there are any tribal administrators who are in attendance who need support navigating applying for that program? Again, sort of not specific to any of these programs, but
sure. So on the tribal side, there's $50 million. So sort of the same rebates we're offering through the state. That's open to tribal entities across the state. I think it's like 400 can apply. I think about 100 are in the process. So sort of for any, I know NREL is helping support that, and also the Alaska Association of Housing Authorities, AHA, is also kind of in that space. I don't know if there's a good sort of like consolidated information point on that, just because it's available to so many different entities and they all kind of can decide how they want to engage and track it. So we're a little bit keeping an eye on that, or working with entities that want to work with us, but that is different entities that'll be administering that program.
Great. I'm sort of trying to do a good job of capture some of these in the chat that perhaps aren't in the Q&A. I think this one might be for Dan, related to USDA REAP. Would an old-fashioned sawmill be eligible?
Possibly. Really it comes down to, do you have a business license? And if you've got a business license, let's talk, let's figure something out. And then it depends on what do you want to, what is it you're looking to do? Do you want to get more energy efficient equipment? Do you want to do like a hydrokinetic direct drive, like a really old-fashioned, like a water wheel turning a reciprocating saw. Um, we can work with all that. It's all just going to come back to what can you document? We're the government. We love doing paperwork. So it's all going to come back to, just be patient with us as we work with you through the paperwork.
And then just maybe to tack on, there is another question, more so maybe just a clarifying point. Are village and tribal corporations now eligible applicants for REAP?
Yeah, yeah. As I'm assuming that meat refers to the ANCSA village and regional corporations. They have always been eligible. The regional ones, that's where the like Nana, Doyon, that's where the 8A clause has to come into play. And we haven't been told no, that's ineligible. So until someone tells me no, we're just gonna proceed. Um, but yeah, every village corporation is eligible for a REAP grant, whether they need new refrigerators at the village store or solar panels on the roof or new pumping, even new fuel pumps at the gas station might be eligible. It's all just going to come back to if you can get an energy audit documenting the savings.
Great. This perhaps might be for Ethan. We've got one from Miles Baker for HFC rebate programs. What does the 150% AMI work out to as an income limit here in Alaska?
I think the 150% is around 90,000 for an individual and like 160 for a family of four. You can go to, I think we've got a link on our energy rebate page. It'll take you to HUD and you can kind of play around with those different numbers too.
And I just want to chime in because there was the question about the Tribal Here program, and Natalie shared that Griffin Hagel Forster could be a good contact if anyone has questions over at the Association of Alaska Housing Authorities. I think they're working on trying to do a consortium or help folks apply in some way. So we'll make sure to share. I'll share that email in the wider chat. I think that was, yeah.
Great. And then, yeah, just also want to flag, again, we'll be sharing all these resources afterwards. Kathleen Benke just shared a good one for the income limit info in the chat as well. We do have a few minutes left here, and I know a lot of those questions were aimed towards the folks who live and work in Alaska. We've got incredible expertise here from the federal side as well, so or just, more so outside of Alaska, federal side. So any like final points that you wanted to hammer home or, make sure the audience is aware of, Rachel and Ryan, before we sort of close up?
I think I'll just add, Jenny mentioned this a few times. This is a lot of information. And if you're coming to this and you're thinking, I have never heard of any of these programs, at least on the IRA side, you're right on time. This is a 10-year law. We're in its second year, going on its third year. This past tax filing year was the first time that anybody could take advantage of direct pay, which is obviously a large part of what Ryan and I talked about. So if you are feeling like you are late to the game, if you're feeling like you don't understand some of these things, that's okay. You're right on time. And our goal is to make sure that you feel confident and equipped when it comes to next year to know how all of these pieces work. We've got a lot of time to figure this out. So we look forward to the ongoing conversation and continued dialogue. And thank you, to all of our friends at REAP who help pull everyone together. This is really great.
I'll just share that when I think about using the IRA provisions, I think a lot about priorities, planning, and partnership. Number one, what do you want to accomplish as a community, and how can these tools help you? Planning, thinking about a way that this matches up, like I mentioned before, and things like your capital plan and other considerations. But then also partnership with REAP, with technical assistance providers, with the state, and I think hopefully it's represented here that across the federal family, we're trying to work very closely together so that we can bring these resources to you. And so really encourage you to think about from the federal government to the state to civil society and more to help you get this done. I think that will really help you unlock everything that makes sense for you and for your communities. And thank you for all your time and for listening.
Amazing. Well, with all that expertise and information, we are still on time here. So just to wrap up, thank you so much again to our incredible panel and to Jenny for moderating this really dense but yeah, really informative and helpful information to get folks in Alaska thinking about these incredible opportunities. We'll make sure and follow up with all of the links and resources and contact info for folks who can help us to sort of navigate these opportunities and maximize the benefit for everyone here across Alaska. I will also plug as well that we've got our second installment of the REAP Energy Speaker Series, the Fall Energy Speaker Series, coming up 2 weeks from today, with a rock star cast of energy educators, including Kat Walker, former state educator of the year, our education director, Colleen Fisk, and then Chandler Kemp, who does a lot of really awesome programming with UAF Bristol Bay all around sustainable energy. So we've got that registration link live. We'll have more on our website pretty soon here, and just really appreciate you all taking the time during your lunch hour on a Wednesday to tune in, stay engaged, support our work, and then also just educate yourselves to really help us fulfill the mission of building a more energy efficient, renewably powered future that's going to benefit all Alaskans. So with that, thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll follow up real soon.
Thanks, everyone.